Come on by and have a bite at the Crossroad Diner, the place your spirit goes when it might be time to change direction. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Crossroad Diner. This is your host, Steve McCurdy. And from Lafayette, Louisiana today, an area of the country that's near and dear to my heart, just mainly because of food. I want you to welcome Deborah Leblanc. Deborah is a certified clinical hypnotherapist, but her history is bigger than that. Welcome to the Crossroad Diner, Deborah.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve.
That's my pleasure. Super. Now, Deborah and I were visiting a little bit before we hit record, and her history is broad. She's got a wonderful spectrum of experience that ultimately brought her to hypnotherapy. Tell me just a little bit about when you were. I mean, I know when you were a little girl, you wanted to be Wonder Woman or whatever. But when you got to high school and you said, I got to step into life. What was that path, or how did it look for you at that time?
Actually, my path never went in that direction. When I was, the only time I ever said, this is what I want to be in life was when I was about, I guess, 8 years old. And I figured I wanted to either be a nun, Superman, or a psychiatrist. And none of, the three of those things never worked out for me.
Yeah, it's an odd mixture to put together.
Yeah, it's really, well, my parents divorced. They separated when I was about 8. And my mother took a really odd turn. I was raised by a very emotionally and physically abusive mom. And so I raised my younger brother and sister, went to school. At 14 years old, started working at a donut shop. I got married at 16, not because I had to. Didn't have my first child till I was 18. And it was probably, I was pregnant for my third child when I really opened my eyes and said, it's okay to see this. I had actually married a male version of my mother. And I knew if I didn't do something, my girls were my stimulus in. I wanted a better life for them. I wanted them, one wanted to learn to play violin. She was very talented. And I wanted her to experience that. The other one, wanted to learn how to train horses. I wanted her to be able to experience that. So I knew if I depended on the man I was married to at the time, that it wasn't going to happen. Just we winded up on welfare, just like we were when I was a kid with my mother. That was not acceptable to me. And so I jumped in. I was going to school, being married, and of course, raising children. Now, I did get my degree in marketing. I jumped into oil field because back in the 80s, late 80s, that was the thing in Lafayette. I'm sure you remember.
Yeah, all of Louisiana and Houston and East Texas and probably through Mississippi and Alabama, all across the South, oil is king.
It was. And I'm going to wind up making that long story very short. But I worked for a transportation company that also did fuel brokering for about 12 years. And then I became the first female senior executive VP of a transportation company in the U.S. Wow. I had worked my way up to that. But I pulled up one morning, the morning after I was given that title. They gave you a certain spot to park in. And there was this little voice in my head that said, you're not going to be here very much longer. So I just took that with a grain of salt. And I said, okay, well, I'm here for as long as I'm supposed to be here, right? Well, probably 2.5 years later, I get a call from a good friend of mine in London. And they just come out with new technology they were able to monitor fuel underground by ultrasonic gauge. Now, I created a logistics company for dry freight for the company I worked for. And of course, my wheels started turning, and I said, with this type of technology, if it can be done in dry freight, it can be done with fluid as well. So I got a team of IT people together that knew something about the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And I created a program called Focus, a fuel ordering and carrier utilization system. That was before hypermarts, like Walmart and Albertsons and these supermarkets were putting fuel in. It was right at that moment when I opened my doors that they came out. Now, they knew nothing about fuel. I knew nothing about groceries except how to get them there by truck. But to go in and tell somebody, if I can give you the solution to allow you to concentrate on making, because they operate on very small profits, to increase your profitability on your grocery end, and the cost that you would incur to get your fuel to you delivered logistically on time at the best cost, for every load, and save you money, how would that work for you? Well, that was their saving grace. They knew nothing about fuel.
Sure.
That's how I got into it. I was the first logistics company. I had no benchmark company to work off of. Right. So I'm in there. I built the company. It went international. And then in the midst of that, now I left a mid six-figure salary to go jump into something with zero, a big goose egg. Okay. And I did consulting work. I didn't even go to the bank to start the company. I did consulting work and used that money to fund this new one I was building.
Right. Yeah.
Well, so the company grows. It goes way above and beyond my expectation. But, that sometimes you just know that you know that you know. And that's how I felt. I was very confident in it. And amidst all of that, I wound up getting a divorce. And then probably, oh my gosh, let's see, it's 8 years now. I lost my 3-year-old grandbaby. She was autistic, and it was the most devastating thing I'd ever gone through.
Imagine.
I've lost people I've loved, but losing her was like, there aren't enough jewels or diamonds in the world that could ever replace the what she meant to me. And then 4 months later, I lost her mother in a fiery crash. She was my youngest daughter. I didn't even get to see her. It was closed casket.
Yeah.
A year after that, now, my ex-husband now had disconnected completely from his daughters. Well, he had never connected with them in the first place. But my middle daughter passed away suddenly. She had been in rehab for alcoholism and had been doing really well. And then her sponsor committed suicide.
Deborah.
And when her sponsor committed suicide, she started closet drinking. And we literally found her one day unconscious in her living room. She was in ICU for 3 days, maybe. And her kidneys had shut down, liver, pancreas. She just shut down.
Yeah.
So I lost her. A year after that, I lost my dad and my youngest brother. And that's when I was a shattered soul. nothing was worth anything. It's like, what is the purpose of this life? What is
Right.
the purpose? You're running like a dog to keep up with stuff. Okay. Now, granted, it's for my children. All right.
Right.
You'll do anything for your children. What happens when you don't have them? I have one daughter left, my oldest child, but she's now off on her own. She's a nurse. She's off on her own. And I'm looking around myself and saying, what is your purpose? You're gonna die, have a tombstone put over your grave that said you built a company? Whoopie-doo.
Yeah.
Aren't we here to make a difference in people's lives?
Right.
Isn't that the reason? Because I know my daughters that passed away made an impact on my life, and that grandbaby made a huge impact on my life.
Absolutely.
So I sold my company, and I kind of went into a hiatus of just walking in a circle. I looking where, what, who am I now? What am I? And I didn't realize it, but what my mother had created in that abusive environment was my worth was in what I did.
Yeah.
Not in who I was.
Right.
So that
your identity was in doing and the success of the doing.
Right. That's right. Now, I was actually looking for, I have a pretty large piece of property that I was looking for how much fill dirt would it take to make a mile long roadway through this property. How much fill dirt would it take how many truckloads would it take? I was Googling this.
Okay.
And out of nowhere, there is a hypnotherapy college. Information pops up. And my heart started beating really fast. And I know myself by now, you start paying attention when your body starts reacting like that. It's something I knew I had to pay attention to.
Right.
I jumped in with both feet. It was as if I had been doing it all my life. I graduated with honors and the director's award. It was like I had lived this before. That's what it felt like. I had done it before. Yes.
So it's so familiar, and it came so easily to you.
Yes.
That you identified with it in a way, I guess.
I did, but it was a matter of here was a way that I could really get in touch with people and offer them some voice of hope, especially in a world that is so troubled right now. We have so many people, even our adolescents, that are on medications for depression and anxiety.
Right, right.
Middle school kids. And there aren't enough beds in psychiatric wards to keep up with them, which is somebody has to do something. And I'm a fixer. That's me. I'm a fixer.
Yeah.
So I want to, it was I want to be a voice of hope. I want it to be something that people could reach out and actually touch and breathe. They can breathe now because there is a place you will be accepted without judgment, unconditionally, and there is hope. Right, no matter how messed up your life is right now. That it may be just this moment, but that doesn't mean it has to stay that way.
Right. A lot of the work that I've been doing lately includes some of the research that Brene Brown has done on the impact of shame on openness and availability to your resources, combined with the work that Sean Aker and others have done on gratitude and its effect on brain chemistry. And it sounds like your work also is in that arena, and giving people access to their own ability to heal and to find purpose and to, talk to me a little bit about how that shows up in the world. What does the process look like?
It, it basically comes down, it boils down, no matter who has what problem, it boils down to this little bitty nugget that says you came into this world unique,
Right.
one of a kind. Now, in your and your mind was clear. You were attuned to sensation. If you were raised or being pregnant by a mom who sang to you or played classical music, you could feel the lulling of that. But if there was a lot of chaos and yelling,
you identify with that too.
Yes, you would identify with that as well.
It.
So it's bringing people back to that moment when you were at your purest, when nothing had touched you yet, and just allow yourself to be. If you just to be, not what your mom wanted, your dad wanted, your brother, sister, not what the bully said you were, not what the teacher said you would never be.
Right.
But what does your heart beat for?
Right.
Why does your heart beat? When you take a deep breath and you erase all the garbage, you take all the garbage away. That's one of my biggest things, is helping them remove the garbage that we parked in the garages for so long, and look at the purity of that as long as you're breathing, you have a chance to start over. You have a do-over every moment of every day.
That's great. Let me ask. I want to ask you about that, because that you're preaching my gospel right there. That we are unique, we are enough, but we are so indoctrinated from the time that we come into the world and start being stimulated by the things around us, that detaching from that to get to ourselves, there are big obstacles to that. And it strikes me that hypnotherapy probably is a great facilitator of penetrating that falsehood and empowering that looking at cleanly. Is that accurate?
That's accurate, because 88% of your brain power is your subconscious mind.
Right.
And 12% is your conscious mind. That's where your critical, your reasoning, willpower, decision-making, all of that goes on in your conscious mind. Anytime you take in new information that could affect your life in a positive way,
right,
if it bounces against your critical mind, which kind of separates your conscious and subconscious, and it bounces against that, and it threatens a known association that says, for example, maybe you heard as a child, children should be seen and not heard.
Yeah.
Okay. So you learned that a positive for you was staying small and quiet. You stayed out of trouble. But
and that becomes an insidious underpinning that penetrates everything about you.
That's right. It keeps you from moving into the big beyond. That is for somebody else. You can't conceive it for yourself.
Right.
Because you kept yourself so small because that was safe for you.
Well, you thought of it as a truth because you trusted the people that taught that to you. And so that you thought that's the way the world works. That's not an opinion. That's truth. That is fact.
Yes.
And disassociating from that takes an epiphany sometimes. How do you get there?
Sometimes it does take a number of sessions, but you would be surprised at how some people, just giving them the time to breathe correctly, and to quiet their mind. That is a big secret. Quieten your mind. People are afraid of the silence because the answers are there.
That 12% conscious mind has got a megaphone. It's very, very loud, and it's got these false beliefs that appear to be real. But that unconscious part, that's more of a gut thing than a language thing, I would think. Um,
Well, it's a gut thing, but it can be a wrong gut thing. All
Absolutely.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So if in hypnotherapy I can go and tell you, all right, I bring you back, I can regress you back to a time when you thought you could do anything. I remember a time I was the biggest tomboy on this block when I was like 5 years old. I was swinging from tree limb to tree limb. I could be Tarzan. I could be anybody. All right. I'd wrap a bath towel around my neck and jump off of the sidewall of the house thinking I was Superman, not Supergirl. I
Right.
didn't see gender. I just saw this is it.
Yeah. Power figure.
That is, no one taught me. Um, no one taught me how to come out of the dark. That was purely by grace.
Yeah.
That was purely by grace. I'm just here to help others get out of the dark, their own darkness.
Well,
Sometimes it
and
takes
that,
them a little while longer than others,
right.
and sometimes all they need to hear is you can.
Right.
You can.
Well, you're talking right now about the metaphor that we use with Crossroad Diner is this introspective space that you get to when you're not happy with the way things are, but maybe you don't even know what the options are, how it could be
Yeah.
different because you're still stuck in that this is truth place. And
Yes.
you change direction because you know you need to change, but it's not an informed change. And you find yourself back there and feeling like a failure. But this grace that you're talking about, until you accept that grace that I am who I am because of all the things I've done, and
Hmm.
that is, I may not be where I want to be, but become more equipped. Um, it sounds like this critical place where you start believing that there can be more and that you yourself are enough. That's a critical openness. And how does hypnotherapy work to? You talked about regression, but how does that work to stick?
Well, just the way it was stuck as a child, we in hypnotherapy by silencing the conscious mind and getting past the critical mind, we create a doorway to get into the subconscious mind. And it's just shedding light on the falsehoods that were
Right,
planted there.
right,
And because you're right, you said it a moment ago, it's bringing people to a place where they can actually heal themselves.
hmm,
We all have the ability, God-given gift of being able to heal ourselves mentally, physically, in a lot of ways. I'm not knocking, Western medicine at all, but um, a lot of the issues that we're having today, the craziness that we're having today, is
yeah,
because one, nobody's listening.
yeah,
Nobody is listening. Two, everybody's you have two classes and they're the same. You have two classes of people, but the same subgroup. They're sheep following what sheep herder, the ones yelling the loudest, right?
right,
They're all sheep following one direction. And where they're headed, off the cliff, they could care less. Somebody's going there and they look like they know what they're doing, so I'm going to go there,
right,
right?
yeah.
Now
Knowing
we know
knowing
where that
who
leads.
knowing what to believe in this environment is very difficult because we're bombarded with media that has a shame focus
Yep.
and an accusatory attack. This is the enemy focus, not just we believe differently and we think this would work better, but no, you're wrong, and you will take us straight to hell in a box. And
Hmm.
that undermines our ability to have faith in what we believe, particularly when we believe in something and we follow it, and then we find out that there's falsehood behind that, or humanity. So where does a person begin? I'm sorry, you seem to have an idea there.
No, go ahead.
Where does a person begin uh, to find out that they could find a technician, or excuse me, a therapist like you, who could help them with that process. And I'm sure that that it must be a trust building thing between you and a prospect, because they're exposing themselves to complete vulnerability in some cases.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How does that begin?
The first place is developing rapport, with the client, letting them know that they're being heard, not just telling them.
Yeah.
They'll feel it, they'll know it. And then after that first session, it takes one session. And before you know it, it's like it started with a little dribble, and now they're throwing up all this garbage. It just happens.
Right. Yeah. Well, my experience is that people are hungry for connection and something to trust and believe in, and that takes a safety environment. And it sounds to me like when a person connects with you initially, the first goal is one of the folks that's going to be on. I actually was on the week before you. Talks about the matrix of trust and respect. That in every relationship we have some level of trust. Like I just met you today, and it was started at 0, but it quickly started moving up, and not because of your resume, but because of our relationship in this discussion.
Yes.
And then respect is the same thing. So you've got to be high on both of those matrices in order to open yourself up and accept your own vulnerability and know that it's going to be honored and respected and taken care of.
Yes.
How do people find you? How do people discover you as an option?
Well, I mean, typically people have found me. My website is mindpaththerapies.com.
Mindpaththerapies.com. Okay,
Yeah,
we'll put these these will be in the show notes, both for the video and for the audio for the podcast. So mindpaththerapies.com. And what's the initial contact like? What happens?
I offer everybody a free 15-minute consultation because
good.
I wouldn't want, usually it's like seeing a doctor. I will see a new physician if I have a referral from someone that knows that I trust.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to be spilling my guts to somebody that I've never met before, right?
So yeah, particularly about vulnerable things here.
Yes. Yeah. So I let them connect. I want them to feel comfortable. If they don't feel comfortable, it's no harm, no foul. I let them touch and feel. Kind of weigh it out and see how it feels.
Sure. Deborah, is that kind of one-on-one personal thing? Is that your primary connection, or do you have any materials that people could, read or access to get a sense of what the experience would be like?
I have a lot of material, of course, on my website. I have hypnotherapy sessions, actual sessions on MP3 for download. And then of course I do public speaking. I've been doing that for 12 years.
What audience has you come talk? What's the organizations that know that this
varies.
is valuable?
Normally it's I've spoken before about a group of about 1,000 speaker coaches,
right?
High schools, seniors, and they try to stick it to juniors and seniors,
right?
Which
they're at an absolute big decision point and an identity shift. Yeah,
they are. And I'm starting to get some attention from the middle school superintendents of schools because there's such a rampant rise in suicides and in just these kids destroying each other, middle school kids.
Well, and I think the epidemic of social media has been, I used to teach, one of the things that I've taught for years is creativity, and people think they're not creative. And if you give them something to find fault with, they're amazingly creative. They can find fault in an
Yes.
instant. Finding something right with it is the challenge. And so social media is so easy to jump on the bandwagon of criticism. And these poor kids are just getting beat up with it. It's always been the case in middle school when they go through that transition, but
Mm,
it's worse now because it's amplified by the access of strangers taking a pot shot at you. Um,
that's true.
Before we wrap up today, I want to give you a chance to just talk to us about the importance of hope and the non fuzzy, non woo woo, grounded in reality um, material like you were talking about. You come from an enormous amount of trauma and an enormous amount of achievement.
Yeah.
It must have been very difficult for you to come to that place with all the trappings of success around you that this isn't it. Now, obviously, the enormous losses caused you to question it, but
Yeah.
we don't want everybody to get to that level of a crisis point. What are early signals? What are early signs that I am not living a life of hope and faith in myself?
Well, just
Is that
that.
an unfair question?
Well, no, but I don't know if you're going to want me to give you the real answer. Um,
I think I do.
uh, when when I was 14 years old, I attempted suicide, and I mean, I took everything my mother had in her medicine closet. And she was addicted to prescription meds,
Right.
any kind of mood stabilizer, painkiller, whatever. I took. It was the last bottle I counted was almost 400 pills.
My goodness.
And I take them and I closed it and put them back in the medicine closet. She didn't have
Mm-hmm.
a cabinet, she had a closet. And because I didn't want the drama of, oh, there's pill bottles everywhere and I'm on the ground and they know what happened. Now they're going to bring me to I wasn't looking for attention. I wanted to die.
Right.
That was it.
You just wanted a way out.
And that's it. And next thing I realize, I can feel I'm on my bed and I hear my neighbor's voice. And they said, we're going to have to call her mother. Now, I tried with all of my might to open my eyes and say, I'm okay. No, don't call her. Calling my mother at work. Oh my gosh. If I'm not dead now, I'm going to be.
Mm.
She'll finish the job. I didn't have any say so. They called her. She called a doctor who lived 2 blocks from us. He came
Mm-hmm.
over and he said, he started poking around. He said, she's at that age. She may be starting her menstrual cycle. I'm going to give her a shot of Demerol.
I'm sorry
Yeah.
to laugh.
No.
That is just so
Look,
ridiculous.
I heard that and I was panicking because I knew if I got the shot of Demerol, this was added to all the drugs I'd already taken. I'm gone. And I have come to the conclusion that I had no right to try to take something away that was given to me,
Right.
the right to life, this life. I had no right to say, here, I'm throwing it back at you.
Right.
But there goes the needle. I felt it. Woke up 3 days later by myself, same clothes I was in when I'd done it.
Wow.
And I was covered in a thin layer. It looked like sand or salt.
Okay.
It was all over my clothes. I actually sat up and you could see my body's outline on the coverlet on the bed. That was in that. It was like somehow my body had perspired or just sweated out all of the medications I took. When I'm telling you, it was by the grace of God.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now let's hit part 2. After my grandbaby dies, my daughter dies in a fiery crash. I tried it again.
Hmm.
This time I went big guns. I went to a hotel, left a letter from my secretary, had all of my ducks in a row, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Couldn't. And even left the maid of the hotel a note apologizing for any mess. Now, I wasn't going to shoot I worked in funeral service as as a consultant, and I did removals with suicides and brain gun, people who shot themselves in the head, and it's a mess. But I was cranked up with some big ammo. Took all of them. And Steve, don't you know, 14 hours later, I wake up and I sat up and I said, come on.
You're supposed to be here.
Yeah.
You got stuff. Yeah. You got stuff yet to do. They're not going to let you out.
That's right. But I speak to suicide to kids about suicide, blatantly, because people that and I tell them this, that 1% of people that jump off the Golden Gate Bridge survive. 1%, and out of that 1%, 100% say that the moment they jumped, they wish they hadn't.
Yeah. Okay, so that's like, to use your term, that was some big gun stuff.
Yeah.
How do we help a person before they get to that stage start to reach into themselves and go, I do have value, whether I can see it or not. And there is a road for me, whether I can see it or not, and reach out to someone like you or another a therapist, someone in whom they can tell the truth, with whom they can speak truth, and start opening that door. So you say that a 15-minute get acquainted call is a free call with you.
Yeah.
And so in this case, do you welcome people that are at crisis points to call you about these things?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So on your
go ahead.
On your website is this consultation link. And we're gonna put your website link in the notes. So let me just say to my audience, you're here hopefully because people like Deborah and I share this desire to open up a gateway to hope that you don't see as being possible. And on a lighter scale, we're here to say you can find your path, even though you currently have no support for that. There is support, and you just don't know about it. So your first job is to believe in yourself enough to look for help in believing in yourself. Deborah, thank you so much for this incredible sharing you've done today. And do you have closing comments about that appeal that I made to, reach out?
Just that if whoever's listening to your voice, if they reach out to someone they trust, just reach out. Don't be a sheep and follow everybody, because you don't know where they're all leading. Think for yourself. What feels right in your heart, in your mind. Don't filter it through other people's lenses. Think of it as the unique individual that you are. And if you need help to untangle that, then reach out to someone that you trust, who will have your back, that can get you help.
Wise words. Deborah Leblanc, thank you so much for being on the Crossroad Diner, and join us next time when we start a little deeper look at another angle or two of the value that you have and the value that you're seeking and the paths that you're seeking to access it. Check you next time on the Crossroad Diner. Join John Burnett and me, Steve McCurdy, next Monday on the Crossroad Diner when we start digging a little deeper into how you determine what your purpose in life is, why you're here, what you're here to accomplish. Join us in the Crossroad Diner, that place your spirit goes when it might be time to change direction.